Welcome to If Prices Could Talk, the podcast where we dive into the art and science of pricing, sales, and negotiation. I'm your host, Tracy Dent. Join me as we explore strategies and current events shaping the future of pricing power in B2B, featuring insights from industry leaders and subject matter experts. Let's jump into today's conversation. All right, today's episode, we're going to do price flops and pops. We're going to start there, and then we're getting into the commoditization of SaaS right now. So Jeet, Pete, and Richard are all here. We're doing this roundtable style. I think we start with the pops and flops. I want to talk about SaaS as an industry because there's so much happening with AI, but it's having massive impacts on pricing and differentiation, how fast things are innovating, and then how things are changing just in the dynamics of all of these companies. So let's start with pops and flops in pricing. And then I think Richard's example is about a SaaS company. So we'll kind of run with that and get into our examples of a lot of these things that we were reading throughout the week from there. Why don't we start with Amex and Chase? Amex and Chase both did press releases on their highest tier card and business card offerings. I looked at them side by side this morning because Chase's does announce some new stuff and they announced a new business card like for the first time. Amex's might as well have just said, we're going to increase prices later. Like I owe you a reason. It was so the press release was so odd. They opened a couple of locations for lounges. I think it was like Tokyo, Salt Lake City, Newark, maybe. And then there was something new with reservations, but otherwise it was like we're going to tell you later this year, new stuff coming. Look out, going to be big. And that was kind of it. Did you guys see anything else about the Amex thing?
Not specifically, no. Yeah, it's kind of like the industry matches. Basically, the rational competitor says, "Oh, well, they're increasing prices by 45%. I can surely increase by something, and I won't lose any
Right.
market share."
Right.
And then they're also worried, hey, if those benefits are getting better, we'll talk about that they're probably not getting better, they're getting worse.
Yeah.
They won't be able to afford to compete in theory. Like I think the lounge build out is expected. It's high capital to do for sure.
But it's interesting because the communication, even though this is not exactly about the price point, but for Chase it is because they increased their fees a couple $100, right, Pete?
It was like 250.
Yeah. Amex did not announce a change in price point, but you can feel it. It's in the communication. Like it's just they're like we're going to be investing a lot in this. It's going to be a big deal and we'll tell you in the fall. It's very mysterious.
So I think it's really interesting. And the reason is I think Amex was first to market with a lot of the value for a high sort of enrollment fee. So there was a little bit of, status, oh, I've got the black card, gold card, blue card, green card, whatever it is, there's a little bit of that, consumer behavior related to it. And then they did offer a lot of different advantages for travelers, frequent tech travelers. So for me, as an example, I have the platinum card and I've got the gold card. I use the gold card for my food and beverages where there's a higher, return back from a points perspective. And then the platinum card is for my travel. I get a lot of benefits from there as far as reward points. And together, I have a lot of reward points that I accumulate that I use for family vacations and things like that. So I can justify it in a lot of different ways, the use of the two cards. But what's interesting to me is I feel like the quality of the return that we get has been slowly declining over the years because lounges are getting older, lounges are getting busier. They had this huge marketing push about 4 years ago to sign up as many people as possible, and they started coming down a little bit, so we had to wait. So we can't go in, more than 4 hours, before your flight. You have to wait in line in some of the busier airports. You don't have access. Some of these airports are so large, you have to go 30 minutes outside of your gate to go find one. So
Yeah.
I think the quality started coming down, and Chase did a good, fast follow to create more modern lounges. And then all of a sudden they have better, returns, and their price went up accordingly because they've got that differentiation. So I think they had a very smart play. And it's almost like American Express got caught with their pants down a little bit. And it's like, oops, we didn't realize how fast and good Chase was. And now they're like, okay, we have to give you an announcement. So I'm going to give you an announcement, which is an IOU, more value for the future, and you will pay more for that more value. So I'm going to send out a message that says,
Yeah.
IOU, have fun. It's they better. I think the window for them to make changes is fairly short because it's so easy to switch cards that it's, I've got my ecosystem of points, but I can easily cash out my points. I'm not married to the points, and I can easily switch to Chase if they don't, come up. But I also think losing a little bit of market share for Amex is not a bad thing because they are a little saturated right now. So they need to be able to differentiate a bit more.
They were just so excited. Like the enthusiasm of the post was so much around the extra value. The increased price was upfront, but a byline. But then it doesn't really get into the weeds about acknowledging that some of those additional value perks are like if I don't have Apple Music, why am I going to switch from Spotify? Like that's worthless to me. I'm not going to use that. Or like they don't talk about certain multipliers going away for travel. So like what you're losing and the inability to gain points or use them in an easy way, it's sort of masked in that whole announcement. So you really have to dig into the weeds to figure out, as always, like what card's right for you, but they kind of make it not so clear.
Yeah, yeah,
This will be the experiment, though. It'll be interesting to see, do they have some churn from it?
yeah.
We'll
It
see.
is. It is going to be a grab for sure, a market share grab. So I've got my price flop. My price flop is Cox Internet. So I don't know if you guys know about this battle that's going on. There's a battle that's going on between traditional internet providers versus high fiber networks versus 5G, which is our cellular going into the home internet market. So you've got this really weird sort of thing that's going on because internet traditionally have cost X amount, let's say $100 per month. Your fiber line is actually cheaper at like 50, and your 5G is around 50 or less. And so there's been a battle that's going on. So if I'm with Cox, they've got the internet and they've got the fiber optics. So if I switch from their internet to fiber optics, all of a sudden dollar per customer has decreased by 50%. So we had an outage here in Phoenix. My wife Kelly, she called Cox to move us from internet to fiber optics for future sort of consistency. She was on the phone on a Sunday for 3 hours. She went through four different people or three different people, including chat, and it was one of the worst experiences we've had because I believe the customer service people are likely compensated on dollar per customer in some way, shape, or form because they were trying to get us to up our fiber optics to the same level or a little bit more than the internet. So they're trying to minimize the loss. Kelly had an operator that said, hey, it seems like I'm not the right person. I'm going to send you to somebody else.
I'm not
So
getting the job done.
Yeah, yeah.
he didn't want to get dinged.
Cable companies routinely are ranked as the lowest CX experience of all industries. But I think that's their business model. Like they have high loyal customers who can't leave. It's,
Yeah,
because
it's
they
a
won't let
captive
you cancel.
audience.
It's so
Yeah.
inconvenient. So the people just don't want to go through the headache and they end up just keeping their service and that's basically it. It's sort of a declining,
It's
mature, high margin business.
Yeah, and it's this is a classic case of competition coming in, which is good for the consumer, but they don't make it easy for the consumer to make these changes.
I was going to transition a little bit into to a different category here is AI and the evolution and the how everybody's trying to tackle pricing and leveraging it. And we're seeing a lot of different models popping out, whether it's purchasing agents, whether it's add-ons, whether it's you're buying a core product and it's embedded in it. Notion AI, which is effectively an operating system, a cloud-based operating system for a lot of mid to small size companies. They've got four different pricing tiers. They've got kind of their freemium model, then they've got their starter pack, premium pack, enterprise pack. And for every single model, you'd be able to purchase their AI add-on for X dollars a month. And they've been doing this for about a year and a half now. And they just recently made an announcement saying, hey, this is no longer an add-on. Everybody who purchased AI, it's now going to be embedded in our premium and enterprise products, are going to have AI embedded in it. If you want the AI, you're going to need to purchase the top two tiers. What it now does is anybody who's in the lower two rungs, the freemium or the starter pack, they're instantly going to want to say, hey, I want to make sure I'm using AI. Like it's everybody's, it's part of the selection criteria for any software nowadays. So you've got your current customer base, which has got a big incentive now to bump up to the premium pack where they pay more than they would have just if they bought the AI add-on. And you've got your new customers coming in and they're identifying and selecting. Their eyes are instantly going to be drawn to the premium, which has the AI already built in. So their conversion to the premium product is going to twofold, threefold.
I agree. That's a great way to move people and send people to move up. So I agree with that notion. But you're essentially saying now you're going to have two options and two things. So now the mid tier is your lowest tier, basically. So now you're stuck and you got to come up with a third tier, right? Or you have to vary your AI add-on in some way, shape, or form in order for that flow to still happen. So I think it's a great idea to use it as an incentive to move people, but I think there has to be a long-term sort of understanding of, are you varying the AI in some way or creating other options for people so you can have it embedded, because everybody's going to want it. It's going to be table stakes fairly soon. But the question becomes, how do you differentiate? If it's a feature everybody wants, they're going to go to that package that's going to give them that feature. But then you're stuck. You're not going to have a normal distribution through your packages. You're going to have everything skewed to one. You have one offering or two offerings. And I think your choices change at that point unless you vary it in some way, shape, or form. And I think that's probably the next evolution of something like that, is how do you vary that? And I think long term, they better do that, and they better do that quickly. Otherwise, that's not going to be a good long term strategy for them.
It seemed like I had sent you guys G2's like buying behavior report for 2025, and one of their commentary was that AI as a feature is kind of assumed at this point.
Yeah.
So as people are going all in on AI, it just made me think, Richard, like, yeah, perhaps this was like because they had to move fast to show that AI was in the foreground. They made this as kind of a bridge towards what Jeet is saying. Maybe it's like a stepping stone as they're working towards the ultra premium or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think, by the way, I really like that report. So thanks for setting that out. That report I thought was really very interesting. It had a lot of behavioral component to it, which I found fascinating, right? Because it's so we're so early in the market life cycle for these types of things that it was just really interesting to see how people are evaluating using different software solutions and then AI as well. So it's pretty good.
Well, I think
Yeah.
right now part of
Yeah.
the conversation that the G2 report came out with is saying that people are buying more pay-as-you-go options and purchasing smaller but more frequently. I think the ground is so, with you're looking at Microsoft and Facebook, who are trying to expand how much development is being done at like an incredibly rapid pace. You've got smaller SaaS shops popping up every single day. Uh, People, the buyers, are going to spend less of their budget on more tools, and there's a lot more testing going on now than ever in terms of different SaaS softwares of like, I'm going to dip my toes in this, spend a little bit, see how it is, how it evolves. And maybe I'm going to have 3 or 4 or 5 different AI tools that do the exact same
Yep.
thing and test,
Yep.
right? And then I'll see which direction I go, because people don't want to be left out. They don't want to spend the millions. So like this is the kind of weird ground that we're in today.
I think it's exactly where we need to be at. I think everybody should be testing, right? There's no reason for you not to test. No one knows, what's going to happen, what technology is going to bring tomorrow. But if you're not testing, you're already behind. I mean, that has to be the motivation that you have right now. I also think, in the papers that you sent out, Tracy, one of the things that I noticed was no one was talking about how early it is in the market and how there's going to be market consolidation, there's going to be failures, there's going to be misdirection of resources and dollars and implementation. All of those things will happen, and we should predict, the companies should predict that that will happen, because it should, because it's so early in the market. And by the way, some of these larger guys are going to go out and buy a bunch of these companies that are popping up. So it's going to happen. I mean, that's the way it should happen. That's the whole role of the market, right? And so we're going to see these types of things get put into place. But I would love to chat a little bit about how do people create differentiation in this type of a market, because we're so worried about the letters AI that we're not really thinking about what problem is it solving for. Like, isn't the bigger thing, what problem internally are you solving for? What problem externally are you solving for? Are you creating incremental revenue streams with it? These questions, it's like, I feel like CEOs right now are fast to just be able to tell the market they're using AI.
It's the market's fault for maybe CEOs are totally rational. You see like the word counts on these earnings calls at like 50 or 100 times using the phrase AI. If
Yeah,
they're being rewarded for it by just saying
yeah,
it,
yeah.
then they're totally justified. And that is a value add package for Notion. And then I think at some point the market needs to ask those three questions to say, is this really the silver bullet that everyone's saying it's going to be?
Yeah, I think
Well,
the thing that's it's such a good point, Pete, and it's like the market rewards you for these short-term, no depth type of actions, but they kind of ding you if you're in the long-term value creation. It's like, oh, you're talking about solving a problem. It's going to take you a year to come up with the AI product that solves a problem. Ugh, I'm going to give it to this little guy that's using AI right now. And it's like, all these fun little things that they're doing with it. Like, what do you, it just doesn't make any sense.
I think a key word that you said there, Jeet, was depth. And I
Yeah.
equate this very much to, we're in the peak evolution right now of self wellness and being. And especially if you're in the higher echelon, it's everybody needs to be having a training program. Everybody needs a trainer. And just to say you have one, you pick a guy who did sports who might not have any credentials. And there's a difference between another trainer who's incredibly knowledgeable about their sport, about being an athletic trainer, physical trainer, and they will get you the results. They're going to be accountable, and they like being a personal trainer is their life. Versus your standard Joe who just like is a gym bro and he's like, yeah, I train on the side. Like doesn't really
Bro.
know much. And I think that's the same thing with AI and these products. The evolution is going to be to very in-depth tailored AI tools for specific industries and tasks. And that doesn't necessarily exist at the moment. If I'm going to choose an AI tool, I want an AI tool. It's going to be like an expert and the best at what I do, and has been trained on tons of data and models that are specifically important for my use case and problem. And very much
Yeah.
the same way we select services and tools today or decide to work with people with their breadth of knowledge,
Yeah.
right?
Do you guys feel like with AI, in the convert, this is a generic, general question, which is, do you feel like we're conflating what's right for the business versus what's right for us and what's good for us? Because I feel like that gets conflated, and we focus and switch because I think those two are so different. Like I've got my own, lack of better phrasing, AI ecosystem for work, that I use for market research, that I use for all these different things. And then there's the broader aspect of company and company use of AI to either drive productivity and or drive revenue streams or solve customer problems, and I feel like those conversations like kind of intertwine with each other in weird ways that it's not separated out.
I guess my answer to that, Jeet, is yeah, there's all these little sandboxes of people using AI for their own purposes, but the old problem of how do you integrate a way of working at a global level or an enterprise level is really friggin' hard. And AI doesn't solve that. Like you still have you have to convince everyone or show everyone a new way. So the change management aspect, like all those things are hard to do and no different, I think. And
Yeah.
maybe even harder in some pockets because you have these super users that use it for every search. They no longer go to Google. And then you have other people who don't use it for anything. And so like that lift is big.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good point.
One of
Yeah.
the articles I sent out, I'm going to put these all in the notes, but there were two that stood out to me from the headline itself, and then a lot of the contents I thought we could kind of argue about because the points that they were making under that headline, I just don't know about. So one was when AI becomes a commodity, how can a business differentiate itself? This guy, so this was techstrong.ai, where it was published, but this guy said there's basically two ways. One is technology differentiation, which is essentially like the proprietary data behind it, and then the other is business differentiation, things like cost efficiency and things like that. So I don't think it's wrong, but I'm like, this is a good one to unpack where when you're creating differentiation, is is there a better way to do it? Is there a different way to think about it?
We're always taught to think about what problem are you trying to solve for and what's the most elegant, efficient way to solve that problem. And this one kind of created these two categories that I felt like was looking at it from the other direction that says, well, hey, what can you use AI for? And I'd rather not think about that because I feel like AI is such a ubiquitous, it's like water. It's everywhere. It's like all around us. And how I pool the water together to solve a problem is going to be the differentiation. That could mean proprietary data that I have or I buy, or how I put the data assets together, to train on the model to solve the problem. But the key is, how do I solve that problem? If I solve it 80% of the way, but Pete solves at 90, he should get that 10% advantage. He should get that 10% pricing advantage or whatever it might be because he's solving for it better than I am. And that could be a combination of the things that he's talking about in the paper, which is there could be a data asset that he's using that's better than the assets that I'm using. It could be the model, the LLM model that he's using that's better than my model, LLM model. So there's different ways to do it, but fundamentally, that outcome is to me the most important piece, and then the creativity of how we do it and the applicability of it.
All right, here was the other one. The other headline that grabbed me, this was from Monetizely. The Gen AI price war is coming and customers will lose. Kind of walks through the benefits, like tech is getting democratized. Everyone can use it. It's cheap or it's free. We love that. Long term, obviously, it's not free to provide. And what I took away from this was like the burning of cash of giving these things away for so cheap or free isn't sustainable. A couple other things from this one, like we may see massive consolidation. You were saying this too, Jeet. Less choice later, but also potentially more price increases. It's just hard because, like, when I was reading this one, I'm like, all right, so he's kind of pointing to people really going into a niche, which, duh. But you still are going to always have these big players that a lot of people are building from the open AIs, GPT,
Yeah.
all that stuff. So his suggestion was that the unless things change, all these things are going to get consolidated. Everybody's going to kind of be the same. Then there's going to be less money for R&D, less dollars to innovate in the bigger picture for all these companies, and that's where the customer is going to suffer.
I think this is a standard cycle of any evolution of a product. We're in the phase right now of every one of these companies is trying to get market share as rapidly as possible, and they don't want their price to be severely differentiated from anybody else, where the understanding of value isn't particularly clear, and the use cases, even for these companies, are still evaluating their value differentiator, right? So you're going to have the huge players that are going to able to tackle these costs. Costs are going to go down for a while. The smaller players are going to get gobbled up exactly, but eventually the pendulum's going to swing. And once we're locked in and we're using it, it's embedded in our everyday life, it's going to creep up on us. And all of a sudden we're going to be, it's going to be another cable bill that we're going to be, figuring out how to negotiate back down.
Mm.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing at first. The argument felt like we don't want competition right now, or I'm wary of the competition, which is obviously not really what his intent was. And I think right now it's like a golden age of getting to try a lot of things, even though you're not sure of what the use case is. It was sort of an indirect commentary on just the well-capitalized companies are the same ones that are going to end up winning here. And that's more of a like an industry comment, or you could say regulation, like Google owning 90% of search. If they were broken up, would we have more innovation? Would we have gotten to AI enabled or assisted search earlier? Maybe. So I think that's more of the commentary, and it's probably accurate. Is sort of the my takeaway at the end is we do end up there. And then I guess the question of how long will it take until that happens? Like, well, is it cheap enough now or ubiquitous with some of these tools that you'll get a lot of fast innovation? So there'll be sort of a continuous cycle, and yes, there'll be acquisition, but will there be more balance if you don't need as much capitalization to innovate in this space?
I think this is going to be a metric conversation. So I don't think I disagree with Richard and Pete, but I think it will be a metric because there's one metric that's out there that basically takes into account the cost, which is compute. If you price things on compute, if you're going to use AI as a advanced Google system, you're not going to need the compute power that you would if you're doing something that's automating a workflow, right? That's two separate uses. And you should be able to split that out. You should be able to sort of pay more for one and pay less for the other. So I think compute is the normalization factor that you're going to have. And then there's going to be layers that are built on, which is it's a function of compute, which is like your cost. And then there's the value piece. Of course, we have to talk about value. That's going to drive your overall price. So if you're using some combination of compute and value, it's going to be some combination of that to set your price for solving that problem. So if you're solving something that's creating immense amount of value, even if your compute is low, you're going to have that window to be able to go charge for it, right? And then you've got the world of what's the competitor doing. And so compute becomes the cost you have to manage and you have to vary in order to really understand what what your pricing should be. But it cannot be just compute by itself, right? Because then it becomes cost plus. Then it's just a function of what's Snowflake asking me to do, what is, Azure asking me to do, whoever's controlling my compute is asking me to do is who I have to negotiate with, which Richard was saying, it becomes a phone company and you have to call them up and go, okay, I'm going to pay for compute ABC, I'm going to pay this much for D, E, and F, I'm going to pay that much, and you keep, negotiating with them.
Yeah. The other thing is like emotions seem to be very high around this topic. Just thinking about like some of these CEOs and how they're talking to each other. I don't know what something you just said made me think of this, Jeet, because it's like I saw an article, I didn't send this one, but I saw an article where the NVIDIA CEO and Anthropic were fighting in the headlines. NVIDIA's CEO said Anthropic thinks they're the only ones who can like do this properly. Did you see this?
Yes.
Super interesting.
So this is one of my favorite topics right now because this is like the classic case of limited resources.
Hmm.
You have limited resources and you have these CEOs all fighting for that limited resource, it becomes a complete cluster. Everybody is suing everybody else. They're saying you're stealing this, you're doing that. Yeah. And it's all because there's limited resources. They know this is not an unlimited resource that they're going after. Because it's limited, there is an advantage for being first to market. There is an advantage of controlling the market. There's an advantage to these things. And all these CEOs are like, no, I'm it. No, I'm it. No, it's me. No, it's my platform. And so they're like a bunch of kids in a playground with like two swings. Because there's two swings and 50 kids, they're all fighting for those two. And this is what happens. And we're going to see a lot more of that. And then what
Mhm.
we're going to see is a consolidation game that happens in order to fit in those two swings.
Yeah. And I know we have to close here. This is my closing commentary, which is that lawsuit between Anthropic and Reddit,
Mm.
which, by the way, we had a streak of commentary about Reddit. I went back, we talked about this Reddit's API pricing in April of 2023 on this podcast. I
Yeah.
went back and watched it last night. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a long time ago.
Yeah.
But we've been talking about it for that long because it was so clear that this was going to be an issue because Reddit's product is that data, is all of
It's
those
a gold mine.
conversations, 100,000 subreddits. It's insane. So it makes sense that they would be upset because they've got that agreement with OpenAI for like 60 million a year or something for access.
That's
So
it?
we'll see.
And they can
Like a
charge
big
Right.
more.
deal.
I agree with Richard. They
Yeah.
can charge a lot more.
That was the last number I saw from like a
They can
year
charge
ago.
a
Yeah,
lot
that's
more.
right.
I hope somebody from Reddit's listening to this.
Please call us. You can charge a lot more.
Protect that proprietary data.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I agree.
all right, so we'll see. Cool. Let's stop
Awesome.
there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See
Bye,
you.
everybody.